may end up being kind of a short show. I wanted to chat with you guys a little bit about this update for direct connection. And realistically, it's an update that really isn't an update. So far as we know, or at least so far as we've been told, we're basically going to start seeing the power brokers start to take delivery of parts. I'm being told sometime around March. Now, that's all fine and great, but the problem that I'm seeing is as time ticks down, there's no marketing and there's nothing to build upon coming into March. And the reason why that's a problem is because with all the hype and with all the buildup and the push for direct connection, there's not any real drive that I can see from Mopar to get the word out as far as what all is going to be there. Oh, hang on. We got sound now? Are we up? Hey, we got sound back? I think we got sound. Okay, good deal. All right, so let me rewind this thing. Here's the thing. We've been kind of getting hype on the direct connection deal coming from Dodge for our Hellcats and 392s now that they're going to have stage kits. But the interesting thing is that you're not seeing any drive. There's no marketing coming from Dodge, Stellantis, SRT. There's nothing coming from that. My understanding is that this being the middle of February, coming into March, all of the power brokers are to start to take delivery, should I say, of parts. And I'm kind of bummed out because there's no list, like initial list of parts that you can go after. In other words, hoods, axles, driveline bits, suspension bits, calibrations. None of that is really being touched upon. And the problem that I have with that is, just like many of you guys, are you still excited about this? The problem is that it's being drug out for so long that I'm afraid that there's going to be a group of guys that were excited about this that are kind of getting a bit ho-hum. Add to that the fact that none of the Red-Eye/Demon parts have been VIN unlocked. See, if you're not familiar with it, parts like the hood, axles, drive shafts, bits that actually make sense to buy for Hellcat owners have been VIN locked. And it's VIN locked in a weird way. Do you guys know that you can't even order an axle unless you have the VIN? And even then, it's practically, seemingly impossible to get that part in your hands. Well, it's been like that for a while. Weird on Mopar to do it that way. But still, coming into March, we're not being told if parts like the axles, the drive shaft, the driveline bits, the hoods, or whatever else makes a Red-Eye, when those will be available for Hellcat owners. And because presumably you would have to go through a power broker to get those parts, is it really all that exciting? I mean, you're going to have to go to your power broker to get these parts and that are practically held up, like almost held hostage. It's kind of weird. I've never seen a manufacturer VIN lock parts. I mean, any other manufacturer, you can walk into a parts department and, I don't know, buy parts. But the fact of the matter is that you can't with Dodge. And so that's really why so many people were getting really excited about direct connection. It was basically opening up the coffers. Well, at least in terms of parts. But here's one other thing that really kind of gets underneath my skin. The description of some of the parts seems to leave a little bit, well, left to be desired. Primarily, the one I'm thinking of right now is the torque converter. Funny how they're offering up the torque converter for the Hellcat from the Red-Eye and the Demon, but there's no real specs on it. There's no testimonial saying, listen guys, I put the torque converter in my car, ran the car, and shazam, this happened. Nothing. There's just a blurb about it's got more torque multiplication. even though on the drag strip, that has yet to be proven. In fact, not only has it been yet to be proven, but we've got guys with Hellcat converters making the same boost as Red Eyes that are running the same 60 foot. So what gives? How are you going to sell me a part that I've seen not perform as advertised already at the drag strip, and it's at the top of the page? Is this going to be the same for the rest of the parts for these cars? Well, so far as I can tell, the drive shaft holds up really well. Thanks to our good friend Multiple Mopars, by the way. But our drive shaft holds up really well. Axles kind of seem to hold up well, but they're not bulletproof per se. And the thing about it is, if these parts are, well, not track tested, then it leaves a lot to be desired by the true enthusiasts that are going to be being driven to direct connection. See, this is the other thing. The problem with direct connection, as it's being built in anyway, is that it's sort of only marketing to a casual fan? Question mark? Like, this is a point of sale sales pitch now, not a play or a, how do you say it? It's not driving the old school muscle car enthusiast to the Dodge parts counter. And this is a point of sale for somebody that's buying their new Scat Pack whenever that calibration comes out, or their new Red Eye, or their new Hellcat, at least in the next couple of years. And presumably then on for the folks that had bought cars and now want to do something to them, but yet still retain warranty. See, the thing is that they're not, I hate to use the word pandering, better way to put it is marketing, but you get the drift here. They're not talking to the true enthusiast. And because they're really not involving some true enthusiasts, then a lot of this stuff is starting to get, well, for again, another lack of a better way of putting it, but it's kind of dying on the vine over here. Every day that they're not bringing something out, every day that they're not driving the direct connection to its starting point, is another day that guys are turning to the aftermarket to get their cars worked on. And I get it. There's a lot of guys that are running around with already built Hellcats and Red Eyes. What do? Well, they may not be part of this transaction in terms of direct connection, but there still is a direct connection to the enthusiast. At least if you played your cards right and you did a little bit of research and you saw that the historical significance of direct connection was huge for Dodge at one time. But since we don't have any of that, I don't know, leftover enthusiasm, at least not from their marketing department, to drive these points home, it's starting to leave, I think, and this is at least the vibe that I'm getting, I'm starting to see a lot of guys just go, oh yeah, direct connect, what was that again? They've already forgotten about it. So anyway, the update is there really isn't an update. We're all still sitting around waiting for something cool to happen from Dodge. This, how many 20 whatever 4 months of direct connection and whatever with these soft, weak things that they're releasing. Spit it out already. It's not making anybody more excited about the brand. If you're going to do anything, start releasing details about the new e-muscle. If you're not going to be releasing something new, something cool, something interesting with an internal combustion engine, start driving home what we are to expect, what kind of technology are we going to be looking at for these EVs. The thing about it is that nothing is being done, and it's all kept so hush-hush. Meanwhile, you have every other manufacturer out there that builds, makes, markets EVs, sending their vehicles out into the world. And by the way, journos are making them look like a freaking Marvel superhero. That Riven truck, the Riven R, Riven TR, whatever, that TFL trucks or whatever it was, put up against the TRX and it mopped the floor with the TRX. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. And the hype behind those vehicles is growing daily. And in some cases, especially with the Riven and other cars that are out there, take your pick, whichever one you like, there's not only more hype and more troll videos from Plaid owners, but there's other manufacturers releasing cars seemingly regularly. So, because of that, we're left to wonder, why the holdup, Dodge? This is starting to get a little bit embarrassing. If you're going to tout e-muscle, if you're going to walk around and try to be the cock of the block, you had better start calling your shots now. I mean, right now. And with all of the cute sounding named cars that are being sent out into the world talking about the EVs right now, you had better start shouting from the rooftops how you're going to dominate the market the way that you basically took over the American muscle car market. Better get on that job quick, son, because there's a lot of folks that are waiting in the wings. I will admit it's a little bit difficult for me as a Hellcat owner, as a prospective Red Eye owner, to start getting worked up about, well, do I get a Red Eye now? Do I send it through direct connection in March and or April, considering this is the middle of February 2022? Do I send that car over and get it worked on only for that car to get absolutely handled by whatever e-muscle contraption comes out? And by the way, let's not forget, there's a lot of e-cars, EV vehicle enthusiasts that cannot wait to throw money at whatever e-muscle contraption comes out, only to get out there and absolutely house internal combustion engine platforms with it. And Dodge will be out there touting this left and right. So again, I ask you, Dodge, how am I supposed to get excited about direct connection when you're talking about releasing this EV onto the world, which is supposed to basically annihilate the internal combustion engine in terms of performance and power? And look, I get it. Everybody wants to talk about the sound and the romance, or they want to try to romanticize the internal combustion engine. Let me tell you something. There ain't nothing romantic about some asshole in a Plaid taking fools behind a woodshed with his little Plaid car, taking race cars out with this thing. It is accidentally easy to run a 950 in those things. And I understand you got to go through some beep-bop-beep to get it into cheetah mode and all of that. But let me tell you something. That takes you from a 50 to a 20. When you can just roll up, put your foot on the brake, watt the throttle, take your foot off the brake like you're dumping the clutch, and it goes a 950. And it'll do it practically until you get bored with it at the drag strip. Dodge, you got to get on your job. And I mean, you got to get on it now. I am sick and tired of hearing about, well, direct connection is going to be your da-da-da-da-da-da-da. No, it's not. No, it is going to be the last breath and the last bastion for dinosaurs that are still looking to run internal combustion engines to have a warranty backed by Dodge. At least that's the way we're made to feel. If you're a fan of the internal combustion engine, a lot of folks are going, man, that's great, this is awesome. But that's not how the EV is going to be marketed. It'll be marketed as the next generation of performance by Dodge. That's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear a whole lot of really Sunday type of voices coming from behind curtains telling you just how excellent and badass your decision was to go EV. They'll show you performance numbers that will startle any demon owner and basically scare them back into the garage. And at no point will they ever talk about heritage, right? Or will they? It'll probably be something like this. Let me see if I can write this script for him. Dodge has never been second best when it comes to the annihilating the competition. Now enter EV and blah, 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 blah. And that's the only place they're going to rely on heritage, because Dodge as a brand is as much a lifestyle brand as Harley Davidson is. They're taking that business model and they're running with it. So you can bet your bottom dollar that the new EV thing that we still have to wait, another year, 2 years for it to be released? Again, meanwhile, the rest of the competition is handling the field with their offerings. But again, I offer to you the question. Are you starting to get a little bit annoyed by direct connection not jumping into the middle of the fray right now? Do you feel like direct connection is just out there to placate Hellcat owners and that's it? NA guys, you're on your own in essence. I mean, I know we've been told that there's going to be upgraded kits, but the reality is that we're never going to see them, seemingly, at least not in time for them to make a difference. And since there's no speaking on the business model of how the internal combustion engine is going to play out, speaking specifically about the 392, then what's the point of even putting that calibration out there? So anyway, let me catch up with you guys and I'll get back on my rant. Let's see. Michael Corleone is in the house with the flex. I like it. Brian's Intake Manifold, what's up? The Michael Corleone saying, I hear you. Yeah, we had a weird audio thing there for a second. Moto X is, how's it? What's up, man? Mr. RD, aka Triple Aught, I like it. Riff saying, what up, peeps? Mean Cats, hey, big peace on, brother. Congrats on the flat out perfect reaction time. Thank you, sir. Say, I need some of that. Hey, let me tell you something. So I had to cut that number. Guys, the car that I was running against was, and we see these a lot down here. I'm sure you do too at your drag strip locally. You'll see them on YouTube if you don't have a local drag strip. But one of the weapons of choice down here is to get just any S550 Mustang, A10 car, strip it down to where there's practically nothing left of the thing, put a drag pack on it, tune, put it on E85, and it's a mid 10-second car. It's a legit in a mid 10-second car. And so that's what I was running against. And dude was on his game. And I did cut a literal perfect light, 0.000 down to the thousandth of a second. He cut an 031. And I'm telling you, I don't take any car that I run against for granted. Not really knowing everything this guy had done to the car, I knew it was going to be in the tens. I just didn't know where. An NA Mustang that's that stripped down could have been anywhere from low tens, mid tens. It could have been a high 9-second car for that matter. So anyway, I got out on him, never saw him again. And, that's cool. But I was really keyed up on that light because I know how fast those cars can be. I wasn't about to lose that race on the tree. So at any rate, but yeah, I did cut an actual perfect light, which was pretty awesome. Ripta saying, I just got here, so did not hear that. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. R saying, too late for direct connection to help me. I already dumped a ton of money in aftermarket parts to get my 570 the 11s. Congrats on the triple O. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Madeira is in. Tampa's in the house with Ronald. I like it. I've always had a good time in Tampa, man. Smoking saying, howdy, Professor Mason. Just ordered a Reich 170T stat today. Tired of the 180 going bad. Don't forget, you got to make sure you have all of your parameters set in your tune so that it does not throw code. But if it was going to throw code, it would have already done it with the 180. But yeah, 180s are a pain in the butt. You know what's funny though? You don't have to order anything fancy. If you get a 180, just pick one up from like your local O'Reilly's or something. I've never had a regular over-the-counter. Well, maybe hold on. Did Quick Bricks? You know what? Quick Brick probably had one break. Just saying because, luck. But I personally have never heard of it. One of those, like Wonder Stat, whatever the name is that some of these guys have. Those actually end up working out pretty good. Smoking saying, congrats on the perfect reaction time. Thank you, brother. Man, I needed it too. I'll put it to you like this. That car, it ended up going to 1070, and you might go, oh, well, you would have beat him anyway. Well, you got to remember the Mustang's mile an hour like crazy on the back half of that track. So, yeah, Madera's talking about the internal combustion versus pollution. Hey, here's the thing. The problem is you think you're only going to sell internal combustion engine or EV cars. Problem is, used internal combustion engine cars are going to be real desirable for folks that don't have garages, folks that live in apartments, folks that live in mid-rises or high-rises, people that don't have direct access to charging ports. All of those folks can potentially end up running into issues when it comes to the convenience of filling her up full of electrons. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to need to change. This is, somebody, you will only have internal EVs, no more internal combustion, and it's, have you thought about this? Let me ask you something. There's parts of every city that ain't going to have the infrastructure to be able to deal with EVs. Were you going to shut them out? Anyway. Smoking saying his first 180 was a Murray from O'Reilly and it lasted 2 months. Well, yeah. What's weird is that I don't understand why the 180s tend to fail so much. Shiv's saying I need to start Mason connection, right? Mike's asking, is there anything you can do to a 570 to get a fair shake of extra power without a tune, or would you say tune should be the foundation for any mod? Smoking saying I'd buy from Mason Connection. MC Performance. Serving up nasty licks of ass whoopings. So what would I do? So without a tune, here's what you can do. To really get anything out of the car, you can maybe go with a set of underdrive pulleys. A thermostat, you really kind of need a tune to account for it. You could go with a ported throttle body and a ported intake manifold, but I mean, that's really more of a supporting mod than it is anything else. And man, I'm trying to think of something that you can do without a tune. Power commander, for sure. It's not going to add any power, but it'll give you the opportunity. And this is the same for pedal box, power commander, kind of a generic phrase for these the signal intercept devices for your throttle pedal. It doesn't add any power, but what it does do is it lets you tailor the driving experience to whatever you like at the time. I installed pedal commanders back in the day on BMWs, Mercedes-Benz, Range Rovers for guys. And the cool thing about it is what I liked about it the most is that I could dial the thing up and make it real aggressive to where just a little bit of throttle input gave a whole lot of acceleration. It made the car just feel a lot more responsive. I could do that, or I could do the exact opposite and dial it way back to where it would take a lot of throttle input to get the car really to start moving. But the cool thing is, like on road trips and things like that, if I was out, I could just kind of put the car in chill mode. And so that's why I liked those types of products. And to be real honest, there's no reason under the sun why that can't be a tunable feature for your car in your Uconnect or, in your whatever contraption that you got in whatever brand that you have. If you can do everything else that you can do with these cars, like change the lights and have all this and that going on, you should be able to change steering modes, things like that. You should be able to change your throttle. So that's, again, the reason why I like those types of devices, and they don't void warranty. The idea is for you to do stuff to the car that just doesn't void your warranty. So, exhaust if you want the sound. But aside from that, there's really not a whole lot. I mean, for a 5.7, depending on the year, I don't remember if you had said the year, didn't say the year, but for an earlier 5.7 car, putting a cat back on the car can certainly help. It'll remove some weight and the car will sound a little bit better. But some of the later cars have the Scat Pack exhaust system, which is significantly better. And how that thing didn't pick up, well, I can tell you that they're just not advertising power pickup with that exhaust system. I can almost assure you that it picked up power. One other thing you could do, this is starting to get a little bit more invasive, is to run a full Scat Pack exhaust if you don't have the later model car with Scat Pack manifolds. And that would go a ways to help the car pick up a little bit of power too. So between those things, those are some things you could do to the car that would either, you wouldn't void a warranty, or you'd have to go look in, like somebody would have to go, hey, those are 392 manifolds. I mean, if keeping your warranties around is a big deal for you, I maybe sidestep that a little bit, maybe just go with the Scat Pack exhaust. I can't really expect that to be a flag for anybody. Smoking saying, I'd buy from Mason Connection. Let's see. Oh, Rip's hanging out with Edmonds. Let's see. Oh, Madera's saying, well, yeah. The thing is politicians are going to start caring when the people that vote for them stop voting for them. They start seeing that they've been made a bit of a ploy in all of this. And, playing on somebody's feelings about EVs, that's the funny thing about this. All of the studies show that long-term use of an EV shows a lower pollutant, or shows to be a lower pollutant. But it's not immediate. It takes a long, long time for that car to get to that point. And then at some point, the battery has to be replaced. How are they going to recycle it? How much energy is going to have to go into recycling and all that? It doesn't matter. You got to put energy into making anything, whether it's an EV, an internal combustion engine, it doesn't matter. They all take energy to make. So you can nth degree that down to whatever. Let's say that it's the same. Okay. The EV is going to be better from a pollution standpoint right up until the point where you got to get a new battery. And then it's a huge expense. This is going to be a cottage industry. It'll be battery recycling, and it'll be battery refurbishing. It'll be new batteries for these cars. All of that is going to be something that'll be coming up as an industry, because let's face it, has anybody seen the resale value of an EV? I mean, some of them have depreciation that looks a lot like a BMW or a Mercedes. They just hemorrhage value because nobody wants to buy an EV that has 80% of the range that it had when it was new. They'll tell you that it's got better range than that. From what I've heard, that's not the case. So I don't know. We'll see. Rich saying he suggests if you're going to do a build on your Hemi that you do most of it at one time. I did mine in stages and it cost me a lot more money. Example is not being big enough injectors first, for sure. Mike's saying it's a 19 Challenger. Yeah, I think you've got the better exhaust on it already. You might just go with the manifolds. But again, that's up to you on that. Chuck is in. Madeira saying, so keeping them on the road will be even harder. What's funny is you'll be able to keep them on the road. I mean, you'll always be able to get gasoline. That's not the question. The question is how many super cheap EVs are you going to see? The other thing is, are they going to start to employ the business model of car share, where it's basically you lease, you rent a car by the hour. City car is what we used to see in San Francisco all the time. And city car, for any of my Bay Area brethren out there, they'll know what I'm talking about. But you would go to like gas stations, and it was, you ever see those scooters that you just like put your credit card in and you can scooter around, and then you know, leave it wherever you, anyway. Same kind of idea with city cars, and they had drop-off points. You had to, like, what a lot of people did is they would take a bus or public transport, or just walk to a or take a scooter to their gas station or place where your city car was. Get in the city car and drive the city car to wherever you're going. Do whatever you're doing, and then come back and just bring the car back where you found it. You rent the thing by the hour, basically. Here's the funny thing about city car. We used to joke that city car needed to advertise on the bottom of these cars. It would be usually a Prius, because of course it was a freaking Prius. These called Priuses 9 wedges, because you'd see them in the city with zombies. Zombies be walking through with their phone, like they just walk right across the street, and somebody in a Prius who's jacking around on their phone would hit them, and they would just sand wedge these fools up into the air. It was actually, you hear it every day. I actually saw somebody get shovel wedged. It was pretty freaking, they're only going like 7 miles an hour, but it's just the look of, oh my God. Anyway, freaking city cars. So let me paint this picture for you guys, because I know you're not really understanding what I'm talking about. So in cities like San Francisco, you'll see this sometimes in like really big cities, Seattle, Chicago, New York. People don't drive. They don't own cars. They live in mid-rises or high-rises, these large apartment buildings. And many of them don't have cars. In fact, some of them culturally, especially in San Francisco area, they really won't leave like a 5 or 6 block area for decades at a time. And so when they get into a car and drive it, they could be 40 years old, and it's like the first time they've ever driven a car, practically. You know, for, let's say they've driven 5 times in their entire life, and they're going to drive down the peninsula to go to some farmer's market. So anyway, the reason why we used to always joke that they needed to advertise on the bottom of these cars is because you would see them flipped over all the time. And the reason for that is that they would be in the left-hand lane going about 45 miles an hour, paranoid. And I mean eyeballs this big around, just, you could tell they were freaking out the whole time. But then they get to their exit, okay? Their exit's right there. So it's hurry shit, and they take off to the right. Well, the problem is they're over here, and they're like, and they take off. Well, basically, they pit maneuver themselves. So they would pit maneuver themselves. The car would not going fast enough to do any kind of really dramatic stuff. It would just flip over onto its side or onto its roof and skid, and it would always seemingly skid in some like angle to where it would skid over, turn, and then flop over on the shoulder. It was almost like it was planned. Anyway, if you guys are from areas like that, you would see this happen. And so anyway, long story short, get ready to see a bunch of EVs flipped over on their sides. That's all I can say. I mean, it's shit we used to see all the time, and it's not like you'd only see it once. I mean, you drive around in the city, you'd see somebody get hit. It would happen every single day, and then about once every 2-3 weeks, you would see an upside down city car. It's just the way that it worked. So anyway, back to our normal presentation. Are saying, have had over a year with my Mishimoto 180, except it's always at 185, not 180. Actually, fun fact on that, the way that your temperature will level out and read in your car, it bottoms out at 185. even though it will read up to a certain number and then come back down, chances are if you data log that car, it's sitting right at 180 or 182. My Reich thermostat will do that. It will come up, it'll hover around 185, and when I look at my data logs, I'm at like 174, 172, 175, something like that. Shift is asking, can I swap a 2017 Plus intake manifold from 392 on my 2016 Scat Pack? Yes, it's all the same. Will I have any issues? Nope, I just want to buy and port before swapping. My Scat Pack is my daily. Yeah, no, you can. So there is, I'm pointing over here like you can see it, the manifold that I literally just got through porting, the one that was kind of the thin casting deal. By the way, I found, I think, the only commercially available 6.4 intake manifold new. I think I found it. I'll find out tomorrow. Anyway, yeah, all the part numbers for the 6.4 are superseded by the latest part number. I had that question too, and the reason why I had that question is because of a potential issue with a short runner actuator. But no, all of those manifolds are superseded. So when it comes to the 6.4 stuff, Smoke is saying the tire shortage sucks. My beloved AZ850s are almost $380 each now. Holy mackerel! Love me some AZ850s. Erickson. Single cab Ram 392. Nice. That's a fun combination. Late to the party, but in the house with a thumbs up and muscle. I like it. Got the flex. I like it. Mike saying, and yeah, I was mostly curious about trying to avoid anything that costs money for little to no gain. It's why I opted for the Hellcat intake over the cold air for better intake temps. Man, it's hard to beat that Hellcat. In fact, going back and forth a little bit with my buddy Chris, we're trying to figure out which is better, the JLT or the Hellcat Airbox with a K&N drop-in filter. We can't really nail it down yet. I can tell you that the Hellcat filter with a K&N, or well, even the Hellcat filter, but the Hellcat Airbox with either the Hellcat filter or the K&N filter is really, really good. So, just as an assembly, and this is with us looking for some kind of an advantage going down the drag strip, and so far that's the combination that really does seem to work really, really well for these cars. I happen to like the JLT. 510 Kurt is in, saying those city car drivers are the worst, my man. So it's, God, dude. I mean, I'd be rolling up 280 and you just see it, man. It was just, you'd see it every day. Gary saying, hello, everyone. What's up, Gary? It's Kurt saying, the way he explained it is so on point. So my man gets it, especially rocking the 510. So, dude, what you have to understand is that, I mean, that there's a, and again, it's a Bay Area thing, primarily Bay Area thing. It's just something that you see. It's just part of your life. And so, and the thing is, if nobody has ever hurt, because they're really not going fast enough, not to mention modern cars are pretty robust, but man, you just, God, I hate to even say it like this. It's going to sound terrible, but it's so goddamn true. Never mind, I can't say it. It made me look like a dick, so I'll leave it. Oh, man, hang on a second. Chuck, thank you very much, buddy. Saying, as you know, the RT Shaker is my everyday driver. I do, however, have a Dodge Dart undercover out back with an empty engine bay. I have a Mint 440 in my shed on blocks. Will it fit in my Dart? Technically, yes, it will. You'll have to get fender mount headers for sure. You may, I think that there's a big block conversion that moves. I think the engine mount comes, or engine comes up. Obviously, there's a specific oil pan for that. which could end up, you might need to get a drive shaft for it. But yes, no, the 440 will absolutely fit. You may, I mean, the problem is you're going to have to get the headers to make it work. And the problem with the 440 is that it is the taller deck. And so I know that's going to create some issues with headers. And the ones that I've seen, the big block darts that I have seen have all run the fender well headers. That may or may not work in your application, but I'm almost positive that Hooker makes a set of swap headers for that. And it'd be year specific. And check with Stage 5. Stage 5, I know they do a lot of Hemi stuff, but they also may do some swap stuff. Stage 5 is the name of the company. So I think they're still around. Check with them on the swap stuff. Again, the B block will absolutely work. The RB does take a little bit more massaging, again, because it's a taller deck. But yeah, it will absolutely work in there. And the reason why I know that is I almost bought a dart with a 440 in it. So that's some back in the day stuff. So 510. Yeah, man. So getting back to the whole city car. So the thing about it is, when this stuff would happen, you would see Kurt. You know. Anyway, yeah. You see, I'd see it a lot. But the thing is, there'd be like produce or laundry or some kind of shit scattered all over by the car. Okay, so you got this sideways up on its side or up on its lid Prius. You got this person standing outside of it, just completely wondering what the hell just happened, not having a clue, because they don't have a clue. They can't have a clue, but they're trying to figure out what happened. But it never fails. You're seeing a bunch of real pretty black hair and a big ass hat, and there's always produce scattered everywhere. We're talking melons, squash. We're talking all kinds of shit. You might see chickens. You'll see all kinds of stuff in a city car. You never know it's going to come. A goat. You never know what you're going to see come out of a city car when it pit maneuvers itself on somebody's. It don't matter what kind of car it is, and they slide and flip, and shit just boom scatters all over the place. And oh damn, you'd see it. But lots of laundry. And anyway, like they were moving, but anyway, it was bad and it was funny. I feel like an asshole for laughing at him. Because, I mean, accidents happen, right? Anything can happen, but damn, it was always the same shit. And I mean, it's like they went to the farmer's market in this Prius, and it wasn't like they were coming back with a bag of groceries. They were coming back with all the farmer's market packed into this damn car. Shit, man. And you would see this all the time. And this is at a point in time, you have to remember, this is at a point in time when you would have Tesla Roadsters catching on fire all over the place. People riding off a Blackhawk into the ravine, and city cars with about like a cubic yard full of gourds or something. It's just, I don't know how they got it in the car, man. Anyway, 510 knows what I'm talking about. It was just like every other. And when it happened, it would happen in like the middle of nowhere sometimes too. Like, well, how did you do this to yourself? They're in a gas station. There's nothing around. Anyway, God, it was, God, it was some flashback from living in the Bay Area. Man, I miss it. The stuff like that, like if you're not from there, you don't understand how funny this is. But it's so funny because it was like, oh shit, city cars on its lid. What kind of free shit we gonna get? It was just, God damn, sorry. Ah! Moto X is saying, getting added by people who want to buy my 2016 Chally Black. Oh, Scat Pack with 8,000 miles. It's a weekender. I can only imagine on that one. That's going to be a pretty car. Oh, Rick is saying he just picked up two Mickey Thompson ET Street SS 305 3520 for the rear of my cat. as dailies, and the price went up from around 850 to 960. Don't know if it's a shortage or what's causing that. It is. That's what they're saying anyway. And again, Chuck, hopefully, yeah, that works out for you. You can get that 440 in there, but you've got to do like it's like an RB swap for the Dart. Like I say, a lot of guys did it. The one that I almost bought was Sublime, and it had the fender mounted headers on it. Mike's hanging out with Rift. She was saying, oh, that's why I asked. I heard something about actuator issues for 15, 16. Thanks for the answer. You got it. Yeah, so the only issue that I've ever had, this is a really weird thing. And I swear this is a one-off deal, but with Quick Brick's car, it was so weird because his car was a 15, I think. Anyway, the weird thing with the actuator on his car is that he had gotten a ported manifold from MMX and it didn't work. It was throwing the code, and to the point where I could actually make the car throw the code at will. And the code, I can't remember the exact code, but it's short runner actuator issue. And we're going, there's literally nothing wrong with this thing. Anyway, we put my intake on his car. It was the one that I actually had to, it's the one that I just totally hogged out and had to backfill it because the plastic on the short side radius, that polymer was super paper thin. Like the one that I just got through doing, where it was kind of a thinner casting that I'm used to working with, where it kind of, it did the same thing, but in a much smaller area. Mine, the whole bottom portion of it was blistered bad. And so I just packed the whole back of it full of epoxy and we put it on his car. And I mean, that thing ran great and never had, I think it maybe had one SRV code pop up and then that was it. It never came up again. So feels like it's like a 15, 16 thing. I don't think that it has anything to do with the later cars at all. At least I haven't heard of it. And again, the latest part number supersedes all the previous. And again, I think I found the only one commercially for sale new from Dodge. I'm supposed to be getting it picked up tomorrow, but we'll see. Hopefully it does. Chuck, hey, there you are. Say, I think it's a 69 Dart. We'll have to look at the VIN. What training would you recommend? Brakes and tires? I would, if I were doing the build myself, if it's going to be, something just for playing around on the street, 727, I'd go with just pretty much any Hurst or B&M shifter to row through the gears. Make sure it's a ratchet setup. Brakes, I would prefer to see something along the lines of, if nothing else, a disc conversion. Willwood sells them. I mean, you can go manual discs, but it definitely would be a good way to go. It just depends really on what you're going to be doing with the car. I mean, if you're just going to be hooning the thing on the street, the brakes work fine. Probably get away with stock brakes for a while. Just you're going to have to update the brakes anyway. Brake lines, hoses, all of that's going to have to be literally the first thing that you replace. So get the brake system up and proper. First, I know back in the day, guys ran drum brakes at the drag strip with those things and, they stopped just fine. So bring those things up to snuff, or if you want to update them with the discs, you can always do that. I think there was a disc brake option for the Dart for the front for that year. So, I mean, with that, with the drum brakes, and I mean, you'd be in pretty decent shape with that. Tire-wise, again, it's going to depend on what you're going to be doing with the car. If it's just going to be something for street and smoking the tires, a Turo AZ850, can't go wrong with that. Keep the wheel size small, though. I cannot say this enough, especially when it comes to the Mopars. Keep the wheel size really 16-inch and smaller, and it will look proper with the right amount of sidewall height. The Mopars look terrible. The vintage Mopars look like ass with big wheels. They don't fit in the just from a visual mathematical, like from a relationship to the actual fender opening to the wheel and tire size. They don't, it doesn't, it just aesthetically clashes when you get big wheels. So 15-inch slot mags would be great on that car. 15-inch torque thrust Ds would be cool. If you can find one, though, you're going to want to do a leaf spring relocation on that thing. Without a doubt, you're just going to want to bring those things in so you can put some like 8-inch wide, 7.5 or 7, at least 7-inch wide wheels in the back of it. So, and if you do that, you go for an old school look, put some BF Goodrich front and rear. If you can get away with it, 255, 55 or something like that. I just not knowing the exact tire sizes off the top of my head for that wheel size, but that will start to get you good for the rear, like a 225, 60, 55, whatever up front. Something just keeps the tires the same height, but a little bit wider in the back, staggered. Torque thrust D you can always go well with. Let's see. Rip is saying, I live in San Francisco and have had those city car drivers yell at me for my car being unnecessary, as they put it. Oh, that's funny, because they don't even own cars. So that's all right. They'll pit maneuver themselves on 280 at some point, bro. Trust me. And by the way, I never saw city cars on PCH, ever. It was always flipped on its lid on 280. Who's saying, I will say they were behind me, so I'm sure the exhaust was a bit loud for them, but there was no reason for them to yell at me the way they did. I'd yell back at them. Saying, what's going on? Be watching the live while on my break at work. Very cool, brother. Cody's saying, what would be a good combo to reach 385 to 390 ponies NA on a 5.7? So here's what you can do. 392 intake, Z Automotive actuator, any commercially available decent cam with a fairly tight lobe separation for a Hemi, which is going to put you at 114, say a 220, 226 cam, something like that. It depends on how much rowdy you want, but the reality is the 220, 230 range is kind of a safe place to be for picking up power and still being able to be drivable, works with the stock converter, things like that. That would put you close to that number, and that will be really all you need, quite honestly, to get you there. I know that Alex just recently did a combination like that, like almost that exact combination on a 5.7, and I think that one, got to remember, it had long tubes on it, so you're going to have to factor that into your cost. But with long tubes and a really good tune, I think it put down 410, but maybe it wasn't 4. Anyway, I know it was 400, but I can't tell you an exact number. But that's really the way to go with that. Gary, thank you much, man. Saying thanks again. I don't know what you're saying thanks for, brother, but thank you again for that. Maybe I missed something, but thank you very much, brother. Yeah. Oh, might have been talking about the intake deal. Yeah. So this one, God, it sucks too, because it's such a pretty freaking job on this intake. But yeah, the new one's going to be just as pretty. But I just packed the back of it full of that epoxy. Everything holds together fine on it. It's got a little bit of a kiss in the short side. It's not going to affect any flow or anything like that. But yeah, hopefully that bad boy shows up tomorrow. Anyway, I know it's supposed to be getting picked up tomorrow, so I might be able to pick it up either tomorrow or Thursday, and then I'm sorry, tomorrow or Thursday. Hopefully, get it picked up. Probably knock it out on Sunday. We are going to be going for the record on Friday, and if we're going to have a rental, if we can get onto a rental, I will be there on Saturday too. So, but yeah, Yeah, looking forward to that one. So anyway, thank you, sir. Appreciate it, brother. I'm over here looking at it like, God, dang it. It's like I wish I had a. Let's see if I can buy a Scat Pack and just kind of hide it over here somewhere. I've got this thing. I'm starting to really miss the 392 platform. Call it nostalgia or whatever you want, but there's something about just the fun of it that I'm kind of missing a little bit. And I'll get like this usually when I start doing intake I typically will start doing intake manifolds January, February. And I won't really do any after April. I'm basically January, February, March, April, and that's it. I won't do any more for the rest of the year. And normally, unless it's like a have to thing, somebody needs something turned really quickly. But the funny thing is that I start doing this, I'm going, man, God, I could probably find like a 15 or a 16 Scat Pack core. And then it's like, nah, I really need to get a 17 Scat Pack core. And then it's like, well, really, I need to get a 19 because the OS is a little bit better for 19. I could do this and I could do that. And anyway, by the time it's all said and done, I've put together this really sick build on a 392 in my head. 510 saying sounds like we drive in the same area. I know, right? Chuck saying his car is black. Yeah, those things are really pretty. Oh, Chuck saying street muscle only, but it needs all new brakes. Yeah, if it really is needing new brakes, I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with going with the stock brakes if it's going to be a street car. There's guys blasting those things down the quarter mile at some pretty nutty speeds back in the day, running those brakes. Just, again, if it's a factory front disc car, that would probably be a little bit better. Even though it's a little bit heavier than the drums, it would probably be better just in general to run that combination. But I will tell you this, the aftermarket doesn't have any small number of offerings for you. So if you decided, well, I want to go with a set of Willwoods, you can definitely go a set of Willwoods. They're going to be pricey though. And I don't think the later kits, need too much work to get them to fit, but at least get discs up front. That would probably be kind of the only caveat that I would have. But just a street car, you're going to go out and play with it, do long, nasty, smoky burnouts. I mean, people have gotten by with a lot less. I'll put it to you that way. And with it being a 69, it'll be a dual reservoir. So at least it'll be safe with that. Let's see. Jalen saying, is the Elephant Crate engine a nostalgia purchase when the Hellcat engines can easily reach the same specs? Buddy, you will be able to answer that before I can. I'm not really sure what the froth is over the Elephant Crate motor, aside from the fact that it made more power. I'm not really over the moon with that engine. And as a matter of fact, I'm not the only one that's saying this. There are folks that I've talked to that have lamented buying that combination. And basically it's an aluminum block, which is great if you're rocking a naturally aspirated combination. But when you start to try to throw a ton of boost at it, the block just doesn't have the structural rigidity that the iron blocks have. You got to remember, the BGE blocks that we run are really stout blocks. I'll put it to you like this. They are not power limited by any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, that being said, I wouldn't really call it a nostalgia buy because none of the original Hemis were aluminum. And for the guys that have shelled out that kind of money for that engine, on the surface, for some guys, it doesn't seem like it's that much money, but it's still lots of thousands of dollars for an engine that is, by some accounts, already at its limit from the factory. Now, the supercharger is a completely different story. That 3-liter IHI is amazing. I'm just waiting for that thing to be commercially available. IHI, I'm talking at you. Gary, hey, thanks, buddy. Saying, hey, B, no rush on the intake. I want to be putting it, I will be putting it on for about 8 months. I am in Texas for work until October. I'm okay. That intake, no worries on my end. Man, I appreciate that. That's kind word. I just want to make sure you get something good. You know what I mean? And so definitely not rushing, but was rushing to find a new intake, because you're not going to get something used from me. Like I say, you didn't pay me for a fixed intake. You paid me for a ported intake. So I want to make sure you get the new piece. The main thing, though, is I will say this, without a doubt, I am going to backfill it no matter what. But that's just to add a little bit of rigidity. If it's a newer intake and it's a little bit thinner casting anyway, and this is something that's kind of funny. I had at one point backfilled, I think I backfilled like 4 or 5 manifolds just because. But I'm going to backfill yours anyway. I'll just take the extra step on that, because if these are running a little bit thinner casting, I want to make sure that even though the way that the manifold mics up when I'm going in there and measuring everything, just kind of checking everything for clearances, if it mics up to be the right size, but it's thin, you can still run into an issue, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm still going to backfill it. That doesn't mean that it's messed up. I'm just letting you know now. I'm kind of getting back into the habit of, after the thing's ported, passes QC, backfill it, and away it goes. But yeah, this one, and I slathered it in there on this one. It's the entire thing, but that's how I do it, because I want it to be as strong as I possibly can get it. So, but it will be awesome. But thank you, brother. I appreciate that very much. Very kind of you, my friend. Let me get back over here. Let's see. Kush is asking, what brand of oil do you guys prefer? Chuck's checking in with Pennzoil Full Synthetic. Definitely good stuff. I, and a lot of us here, Kush, change our oil a lot. Like a lot. And so we'll run whatever is convenient. 0W40. So I like Mobil 1. I've had good results with Mobil 1. I've had really good results with Pennzoil. Castrol, I've had good results with as well. Valvoline, I've had good results with. But the main thing to consider is that you're buying a full synthetic and you're changing it. Like, say, for example, you drive your car a lot as a daily, you're taking trips in the car, family stuff, road trips, whatever, taking the thing out to dinner. It's a primary mode of transportation. In that respect, and you're not racing it, right? You're not going to the drag strip every weekend like some of us knuckleheads. But it's a car. You're doing car stuff with it. Don't let it go past 5,500 miles. You will see in the owner's manual, which I actually have one sitting around here, you'll see in the owner's manual where the owner's manual says don't, under any circumstance, let it go past 6,000 miles. For just driving around cars, I won't let mine go past 55. The work truck won't go past 55, and that thing sees a lot of highway use. So really, as long as you're purchasing regularly a full synthetic oil, you'll be in really good shape. If you are taking really long road trips in the thing, like say you're doing 2-hour road trips more than once a month, where you're really stacking on miles, you can maybe carry the thing out to 6,000 miles. But the way I see it, at 5,000 miles, I buy the oil and the filter if I haven't already stocked up on filters, because I think I keep like 2 or 3 of them, usually right in that corner. Hey, there they are. Right in that corner over there. For the truck is what I'm talking about here. I'll have it run for 5,000 miles. I'll make sure I've got the oil and the filters ready to go, and then at 5,500 it goes up on the ramps and everything gets knocked out. So Frederickson saying what's cooking, B. Oh, wait, hang on. Let me get the shades. I like it. Scat's asking, Diablo or HP Tuner for 2020? Scat, I like HP Tuner. I learned on HP Tuners. HP Tuner for me was a little bit more intuitive because I came from an SCT Pro background. And before that, it was Cal Edit. So for me, the layout was a little bit more intuitive, but they both will get you to where you need to be. It's basically just two different dialects of the same language, with some folks saying that Diablo is a little bit easier to learn. I honestly wouldn't know because I've always run with the HP Tuner software. And again, Gary, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Kush is asking, Pennzoil over mobile? Yeah, probably. I mean, I would say it's a better oil. If you check out, if you ever get a chance, like if you can't sleep, like you're suffering from insomnia, this will help you find your nod. Pennzoil at 100 degrees Celsius will have a slightly higher viscosity than the mobile one will at 100 degrees Celsius. The reason why that number is important, you have 0 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius. Those are the temperature metrics for your cold number, which would be your zero viscosity, which is to say that it flows like a 0 viscosity would at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 0 degrees Celsius. And then at the 40 weight, which is what they call it, the 40 viscosity, all that means is you kind of think of weight meaning this. It flows like a 40 weight or a 40 viscosity oil would at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the boiling point of water, or 100 degrees Celsius. That's a real common number to see cars run oil temperatures at, and the reason for that is because it boils out any water that may be in the oil, any condensation. It ensures that that's out of the oil. So if you have a lower temperature thermostat, by the way, don't just drive the car on short trips. You absolutely are obligated to run that car for at least 15 minutes in one direction at like highway speed or whatever to get your car to stabilize at an oil temperature around 160, 170, 180 degrees to get any condensation out of that crankcase. So just remember, you guys with the really low thermostat or no thermostat, for some of you guys, just remember that's something you definitely will want to do. Albert, thank you very much. I appreciate it, buddy. Asking, hey, B, do you need a tune to be able to run your ported intake manifolds? Absolutely not. No. No tune is needed for that. I do highly suggest running, because I port all of my 6.4 and, 5.7 manifolds to, and it's over here, Dr. Differential and Speed's 85 millimeter throttle body. There's no way in the manifold itself to get the manifold, well, there is, but there's not. To be able to get the manifold to flow anything more than what an 85 millimeter will offer is, I'm not going to say impossible, but you have to really start to take some liberties with what you feel is appropriate when it comes to porting a manifold. So, yeah, the 85 is what I port all of them to. In fact, when I port a manifold, I port it to where when you put the throttle body on the car, you don't have to get in there and feel around and try to center the throttle body or anything like that. I give about 1/3 of a millimeter of clearance all the way around the opening so that you can just put the throttle body on the car with just gravity, tighten it down. And if you were to feel in there, the throttle body just bolts up. There's no intrusion or anything like that. Actually, pretty generous with the opening of the mouth whenever I open those things up. But no, you don't need a tune to run ported manifold. But I would highly suggest a true through ported throttle body like the Fastman 84 or the the Dr. Differential and Speed 85 millimeter throttle body. That's what I've heard the best results have been with those parts. And when I did my initial testing, when I very first started porting these Hemi manifolds, I used the Fastman true through ported 84 millimeter throttle body. And, you know, depending on how jacked up the intake manifold was, you'd see more or less of an improvement. So, but all the fastest cars that we ever dealt with or worked with, they all had ported intake manifolds. And again, on the dyno, they would seem to help some more than others, but it's just where the rubber met the road. I mean, you had some big old tanks that were going really fast. So anyway, definitely want to recommend it. Let's see. Let's see here. Let me get back up here. Frank's saying, what's cooking, B? What's up, man? Let's see. Oh, I think we got here. Got Cody is saying, makes sense. Cody's asking, what are your thoughts on the newer F-150s with the 5.0? Freaking love those trucks, man. What I like about the Ford is that if you've ever seen one kitted out for racing, they are tough looking trucks, man. So, no, I'm a big fan of them. Like them a lot. Kush is saying respect. Thank you, guys. Got the fist bump. Thank you, brother. Cody saying, sucks Dodge didn't put a 392 in the Ram. Man, that is a missed opportunity as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I get the whole Hellcat everything deal, but man, how are you not going to put a 392? It's not like you can't put a 392. You already put a 392 in the 3/4 ton. Just put the car 392 in the truck. It bolts right up. You got an intake manifold that literally bolts right to the... I just don't get it. It's like a serious missed opportunity there. Oh, Smoking05 saying, I've been getting Blackstone Labs oil samples every change, 60,000 miles on Pennzoil, and the wear is excellent. Yeah, Pennzoil is really good stuff. The Blackstone on all of everything that I've seen on Mobile One, Pennzoil is usually right at the top. Mobile One is like number 2. They might be number 1 in a couple of areas, but if the net result is that Pennzoil is typically better, Mobile One is right up there. Valvoline's usually pretty decent. I'll put it like this. The only oil that I know of that has ever consistently not performed well in Blackstone tests has been Royal Purple. It's a pattern that I picked up on a while back. It's kind of weird too, because a lot of guys are running Royal Purple, but then, you know, saying, it works great. But the problem is they weren't really getting it tested. And then really a lot of the import guys started getting Royal Purple tested, and it was not coming out well. It's been a long time ago. So formulations have changed, I'm sure, since then and all that. Now, if we're talking about like Amsoil typically does fairly well in Blackstone tests. Lucas seems to do okay in those tests. I mean, it's not like Amsoil does better than Lucas. Redline does okay. But again, if you're changing your oil regularly, as long as you're changing the oil and changing the filter, that's the most important part of it. The rest, I would say, is secondary, but obviously make sure you're picking the right stuff. And again, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it, buddy. Eric's hanging out with Cody. Let's see. Sovereign saying, hey, B. Hey, Sovereign. Rift has got a good question. This is actually something that been going back and forth on quite a bit with a couple of my friends. Rift saying, I've got a 268 upper with supporting mods on Echo. How much could I pick up if I got my snout ported? Damn. So here's the thing. in talking to some folks, so here's what you would have to do, in my opinion, for it to really matter. Because again, I mean, we've tried throttle body testing on a red eye with a 275 upper, and the throttle body picked up a little bit, but this is with a stock unported snout. And one of the things that I noticed about the snout is that it seemed, and it is just a smidge smaller than my snout is on my car. I don't know if my snout is just bigger than others, like it's like a tolerance stack or something like that. But the throttle body, I noticed that I had to work hard to get it to center on, this is when I'm doing that ported throttle body testing. I had to work hard to get it to center to the red eye snout, whereas mine, I could just kind of put it on there, feel around, get it about right, start to tighten it down, and it was fine. So I have to basically couch what I'm saying by saying that, because if you're going to get it ported, it really needs to be opened up to like the 102 millimeter throttle body size. And that way you can really run the biggest throttle body that you can on the thing. If you don't go that route, then I don't really suggest getting the snout ported. I just don't think you're going to pick anything up. With the 275 upper that's on Nate's car, I think the car picked up maybe half a tenth with the Fastman ported stock throttle body. And I know it picked up like a mile an hour and some change with it. I think that was what the consistent was. It was like half a tenth and like maybe a mile an hour on that car, which isn't nothing. It's a non-zero gain, right? And he's running I think it's either a JLT or one of the open element systems on that car. I really should know, because I was the guy that was swapping the throttle body back and forth and back and forth and back. Literally, we were the same night. It was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Basically, we were just trying to figure out how we could get a result with this dadgum throttle body. So basically, at the end of that, this is what I found on his car. And again, this wasn't in like super negative DA. But it was decent enough. It was like, probably 1,400 or something like that. We saw some change on his car, no change on mine. Was begging for the thing to work on my car, and it didn't. But the beauty of it is, I got to thinking about it. If that snout was ported, with a 102 millimeter throttle body, would you see a gain? Man, I don't know. And the reason why I say that is because look at how many low 9 second cars are running around out there with stock snouts, with stock or ported stock throttle bodies. I mean, there's a bunch of them. So then you got to get into the whole, is it worth it? I'm not sure that it would be. It's a lot of money to get your snout ported. I would almost, and the thing is, the snout just goes like that and just opens right up into like a common plenum. I would almost argue that it would be better to get the snout just it opened up to a 102 and have a 102 get on the car. The problem with the 102 though is the 102s could have some drivability issues in that respect. So I don't know. I would say no at this stage for you. Unless you are just really looking to pick up something to the nth degree, I would say no. Remember though, that when you start getting these bigger throttle bodies, you can develop a little bit of a surge with the car. So just know that coming into it. But man, there's a lot of cars going really fast with that stock throttle body. Chuck saying, B, can I pick your brain as I get further into the build? I'm putting my 69 together. I want that 440 to scream. Sure, absolutely. There's really nothing to it. The combinations that work well for the old wedge motors, I mean, it depends on what heads you're going to get, but, insert aftermarket heads here or ported 906 heads here. Cam that looks something like this. Go to, well, it depends on the intake that you want to run, but RPM air gap with a I don't know, 850 Edelbrock or a 850 Holly, any of those would work fine. 850 HP, 750 HP would probably be good too, give you really good throttle response at the expense of maybe some power up top. But a cam, cam would be, cam's easy, 107 degree intake center line, lobe separation angle of like 109-ish, 108, 109. Total duration on the intake side of like 236, exhaust of like 244-ish. Would put you in the game. Roller rockers, basically just like a comp cam kit, come with the lifters and the springs and the push rods. And I mean, send it. I mean, that right there is, from what I remember from the guys, it's been going back a bazillion years. The guys that had like the Savoys and the Sport Furies and all that would run that kind of a similar combination. 1 7/8 inch long tube headers, flow through exhaust. Don't run a chambered muffler on those things with an H pipe. They ran good. I know that. So, but in terms of horsepower, you're looking at probably a, 450, 460 horse, 440, give or take, but with torque that would, it's all the time, like right now type torque, with that type of a setup. So, that would be my suggestion. That's what 440s are really good for. As a matter of fact, the reason why I'm able to rattle this stuff off the top of my head, aside from just being around some of this stuff when I was a kid, when I was looking for a truck before I got Sierra, the plan, frankly, was to put a 440 stroker 400 small block together, and put that in a D150 truck. Just pick one. I was looking for a short bed, but that would be the 440 that I would put in the thing and then back it up with a 727 with a gear vendors. And the only thing that thing would be for would be to see how long I could smoke a set of tires. And that was it. We're talking, I would see if I can light the tires up for a quarter of a mile with this thing. And so that was my engine combination. That's what I kind of, basically bev napped the combination together. And, the only thing keeping me from going really too crazy with the cam profile was that, I wanted something that was still somewhat streetable. So, mid 230s and mid 240s ish, on the cam side, does fine. The thing about a 440 you got to remember is that the 440, the big block Mopar heads aren't very good at making horsepower. They're really good at velocity, though. At just port velocity, it's crazy on those things, meaning you can make a lot of torque and they're real responsive engines. They're a lot of fun to drive. Little wonder why so many people preferred the 440 over the Hemi back in the day. I can tell you from my experience with the big block Mopars, as far as driving them, you want the 440. But the 440's a blast to drive. The Hemi's really good if you wanted to rev something out, but it was flat. The good example, or if to kind of put things into perspective, the 426 was a lot like driving a Coyote powered Mustang with a 315 gear. Like, you never felt any acceleration. It just went faster because you were able to be wide open in the gear longer. I don't know if that makes any sense. But the 440 was real snappy, kind of like a 392 is today. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing here. Really not. I mean, you don't have to put something together that's crazy with a 440 to just have something that's a riot to drive. And really, that combination, I mean, it's going to make horsepower. Don't get me wrong, but it's making horsepower despite itself. I mean, that is like a garden variety street bruiser type of an intake manifold, to where, I mean, you basically with a ratchet shifter is bah, bah, bah. I mean, just slap the thing with both tires, aglow. So that's really, if that's what you're looking for, that's kind of the way that I would go. You can, with a 440, get a little bit more aggressive with the cam than that. You might say, okay, well, I'd really rather have something that would, the thing you just don't want to, you can't really rev a 440 because you don't have the port flow. Even really good 440 heads are like 300 CFM, I think. So, you could maybe sneak, if you got a really good set of heads and you really want to try to get the thing to sing, you can maybe go with a single plane intake, go with like a 246, 238, 246 cam. The problem is the thing's going to want to try to rev too high, and it's going to be, it'd be pretty racy. I mean, it'd be about a 6,500 RPM engine, but I just don't know that for a 440, I just wouldn't dial it up that high. Let it play to its strengths, drag everything back down where it needs to be, and you'll be in good shape. We're saying, or maybe a bigger throttle body. I don't know if either of those will give me any gains with just a 268 upper. Yeah, sort of, it'll get you, it'll help. But again, just consider those to be supporting mods. And listen, I get it. There's some folks that are claiming some pretty significant gains with the ported snout, bigger throttle, whatever. I need some proof. Like, I need some proof that it makes a big difference and that it's not just a supporting mod. Like, if you had a 10% lower with a 268 upper, I'd say that it would help you. But if you're a single pulley car, in the world that we live in, realistically, it's probably not going to get you where you hope that it'll get you. It's just really not going to go there. Sommer's asking, when is a good time to change your coolant? The red world standard stuff, I don't think it's ever been flushed out and replaced since the car was filled back in 2012. I've topped it off though. The owner's manual, I think it's every 150,000 miles or 10 years. So you're on it right now. The OAT, the organic, hang on. I've got it right here somewhere. Where the hell is it? Figures, I got to find something. Anyway, 10 years or 150,000 miles, if memory serves me correct. I would say at about 8 years, go ahead and swap it out. Or if you've done a thermostat, you've probably halfway swapped it out already. And again, Alberto, thank you very much, buddy. Oh, Sovereign saying he's sitting at 80,000 miles on the original coolant. Go ahead and swap it out this year, and let me tell you the reason why. It's really not a mileage thing. It's a time thing. Over time, the coolant will lose its ability to prevent corrosion. And it's a, think of it like this. It's an ablative process. You're using the admix in the coolant as a anti-corrosion. As that stuff wears out, you've got to replace it. So that's the reason why it's either a time or mileage. It's one or the other, and you got to stay on top of that stuff. Oh, Chuck saying, thank you, buddy. Saying I have all those parts you mentioned: 246 cam, 750 eddy. Eddie heads, etc. I think I'll have to change the engine mounts. Not sure. No, you definitely have to change the engine mounts. There is a conversion. I can't remember the name of the place though. God, it's been so long ago. It's going to take a bit of a search, but it'll be big block conversion into the Dart. And that'll be basically what you're looking to do. But no, those parts, I mean, that's really what you're looking for that combination. And again, 727. The fun thing about that car is that it's going to be set up, it's going to be weighted for doing long burnouts. What I mean by that is putting a big block in a Dart. It's going to be a little bit nose heavy, but it's going to be light with a bunch of torque. So the fun thing is that you don't have to run some obnoxious gear in that car. You can run like a 323 or a 355 gear in the thing, or hell, almost get away with a 308, but you can run a 323 or a 354 gear in that thing with a, a 2,800 RPM stall. And I mean, the thing would just be an absolute beast on the street. I mean, dude, you really may not even need that much of a converter, but definitely would need a converter with it. But yeah, I mean so my combination was all of the above that I was talking about earlier, but I was going to basically be running with like a 3,000 RPM stall, and it was just going to be a mess on the street. But it was combinations like that. That's entertainment value 100%. That's just save up ticket money kind of fun to have. So I mean, I get it, and like I say, they're a lot of fun. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Riff's asking, have you tried the HP Tuner app for your phone yet? And if so, what do you think? It seems to be working pretty well for me. I haven't. I'm such a bum when it comes to that. So I've got where's my tuning bag? I've got a messenger bag that I keep all my tuning stuff in. And I mean, I'm such an idiot. I need to, but I need to upgrade and just get the MPVI 2 Plus and get the app for the phone. It'd probably be a lot easier, especially, running around with, one phone. And I finally, on the other phone, I run around with two phones, able to get the HRP Slips app for that phone. That way, when I'm doing a ride along, I don't have to guess. Although I'm getting really good at guessing what that car runs, I will say. But I was able to get the app on my other phone, so now I can actually say, hey, it ran a whatever it ran when I do that. Because now, I'm filming with the phone that I'm kind of talking into right now, but I can't stop filming and click over and look at the time slip. I can't do it. So I had to figure that out this week. It was driving me nuts, and it really drove me nuts last week because I would have known about that light that I cut like almost immediately. And the thing is, this is the crazy thing. It flashed 000 on the board, and I thought that it was like a screw up, but nope, it was real. It was legit. So I wonder if I get a t-shirt for that. Sovereign's hanging out with Rift. Oh, Cody's saying, I get the TRX was meant to compete with the Raptor, but I feel they could have made it into, to compete with the F-150 Shelby. Now that would be a crazy lineup. Yeah, listen, TRX is an awesome truck. I will never say anything negative about it. I mean, it is a luxury liner for sure. If you never checked one out, they are super swass on the inside of that truck. But, they're pricey, no doubt about it. Shift is saying, I'm going to get a true 84mm throttle body. Should I port my Scat Pack intake Mani snout 284 or max it out to 85. So let me show you why you don't really want to do that. Hang on. So when we're talking about these intake manifolds, and hopefully this won't even come close to showing up. Okay, so when we're talking, good freaking gravy, yes, officer. When we're talking about these manifolds, when you see the actual opening right here, one of the things that you're going to see, hang on, come on, damn freaking thing. Okay, does that, God, that didn't work at all. So one of the things you're going to notice is, see the short side where it dips down right there? Hang on. Right there, like right here. I'm pointing right into here. And this is where this manifold I found it was, and this is why I had to backfill it with epoxy. Kind of see it right there where I backfilled it. The reason why you don't necessarily want to do that is because that area pinches in. And so when I port one of these manifolds, I have to go in and do a lot of reshape. The hell out of here with that. I have to go in and do a lot of reshaping right here in that area on these manifolds. And that makes a huge difference. The downside to that is you just got to be careful. You get one like this one that was a thin casting, you'll get this little, it's right here, you can't see it anymore. I did it in my other video where I show where that casting gets thin, but if you look in there, see where there's like a little dark spot with a line. Look right in here. See how it looks like a little blip, not the thing way back in here. Here. And now you really can't see it. Anyway, that's where the casting can get real thin. And so if that ends up being the case, you can end up either having a very thin area in the manifold that can blister and pop under hard decel, in which case I always recommend backfilling this area. It looks kind of sloppy because it kind of is, but anyway, you just kind of let it self-level back here on that manifold, and once it cures, it's plastic. I mean, it's basically rough up the plastic and it becomes plastic. So once that stuff cures out. So anyway, the reason why I was saying watch out for that is because you can absolutely get yourself into a bind. Now, it's easy to fix. I mean, that manifold gonna flow its ass off. But that manifold would work just fine, but there's like a certain part of me that won't let it go because it's a it is what it is. It's a thin casting, and it popped the thin casting. So again, be careful with that. Just check it as you go. So you're going to open it up, but the thing is you don't just open it up to 85 millimeters because of how the throttle bodies can sit in that bore. They don't necessarily sit even around the bore of the intake manifold itself. So you'll end up needing to run more. You'll have a lot more time getting spent on the lower kind of portion of the snout. Here's the thing though, that was only on this one. Every single one of these manifolds is different. That's why, here, I'll show you. Bear with me here. That's why when I'm porting one of the manifolds, I have this throttle body, which is the one that I port all of the manifolds to. This is that 85 millimeter. This is the original prototype for that. But you'll see a bunch of red marks in here. You'll see a bunch of like Sharpie marks. And what that is that's me physically mounting the throttle body, just barely, not even, you're not torquing it down or anything. But I'm going in and I'm just marking on the manifold itself where I need to remove more material. And so I'll go in and I basically use the Sharpie as a, like a tattletale, so to speak. And I'll go in and I'll mark about where I want to remove material. And then you're not sitting there scribbling it like crazy. You're just kind of marking it. And you're marking the interference edge where if I stick my finger through here, I go, oh, okay, well, there's a little bit of a ledge there. I need to remove a little bit of that. So I mark it and I just, over 4 or 5 mount, unmount, mount, unmount, mount, unmount. I'll get that thing to where there's a super fine transition between the throttle body and the actual manifold itself. And what I try to do, and for whatever it's worth, but I try to leave about the thickness of your fingernail of the manifold larger than the throttle body as it sits on the manifold. And that's so that when you're setting the thing in there, when you're putting the manifold on, if you've given me a raw intake like this, with no, throttle body and all the rest of that, that way when you get your throttle body, you can just put it on the car and tighten it. And you don't have to worry about getting in there with your fingers and you're centering it and holding the blade open. You're like, that's not exactly right. You don't have to worry about that stuff. You just take your throttle body, stick it on there, put the thing on and go. The reason why I say each one is different is because each one is different. Like here, I can tell you that I've had to remove top, I've had to remove the bottom, and this is all just using the same throttle body. So this hasn't changed. Each one of the ports and each one of where the bolts are has been a little bit higher, a little bit lower. It's all within a tolerance, but you got to remember that tolerance can be, the thickness of a credit card, for example. Well, if you're opening things up in millimeters, that amount of variance can be quite a bit. So just for what it's worth, you can open it like that, but you need to make sure that you have the throttle body there and that you're matching the port to the throttle body as it sits and as you're going to install it on the car. I know it sounds super anal, but if you do it that way, you'll always have a really good final result. If you don't do it that way, then you can end up with a situation where you got to put your throttle body on the car and you put all this work into the intake and find out that you're out of adjustment. You can't adjust the throttle body up, down, or sideways or whatever and not have that lip. And you just don't want to have that lip, especially in the direction of airflow. So you want this to be smaller than whatever's on the backside for airflow. Let's see. Madera's asking, do you think Chrysler would go to a big block 6 for the truck, sort of like Cummins, except gas? Well, Dodge already turned that down. The diesel, the 5 whatever diesel that's in the Nissan was actually a Cummins engine that was kind of a Dodge thing too. Anyway, no, be on the lookout for, if they did anything gas-wise with the big 6, look for a 3-liter with a turbo. That's what they've been working on. Ship's saying, I work at a machine shop. I hate castings or molded materials. So inconsistent and nightmares to work with at times. Feels like they have a huge tolerance range. Here's the funny thing, bro. This manifold, the manifold that was on Quick Brick's car, that material had to be like that freaking thick at the turn down. Because I could probably have thrown this throttle body through that opening. But each one, you're right. Each one is a little bit different. Each one has its own unique qualities about it when it comes to these manifolds. So this one had a lot of inclusions. This manifold had a lot of casting flash in it, a lot more than what I was expecting to see. But it was also core shifted. The top lid was like it was wearing its hat. Like it was wearing its hat like this. The way that those runners were lining up. So it doesn't hurt anything. It's nowhere near the worst. The worst one is the one that I was talking about that seemed like it had a whole lot of material. that manifold in particular was so jacked up on core shift that I don't think that it could have been more jacked up on core shift and past QC. Well, they don't go through QC, I can tell you that, but I don't think you could have jacked a manifold up any worse than that one. Summer's asking, is a 392 similar to an old school 440? Sounds like it is. Lots of torque. Yes and no. It is nothing like an old 440 in terms of architecture, but in terms of performance, yeah, you can very much think of the 392 like the even though it's got like the Hemi-ish head, it's got a Hemi head on it, but even though it has that head on it, you can think of it as the quintessential successor to the 440 in that respect. Rich saying they had a good episode on Engine Masters about the 440 versus the 426. The 440 was great for around town, but fell off at higher RPMs. It was pretty much opposite for the 426. I can tell you this, my experience with the 426, I can tell you this, guy, it wasn't all that great. I mean, it was neat engine. Don't get me wrong. It's not like it's a turd, but it just didn't make the kind of power that you think that it should have made. And, you know, people are talking about it's a Hemi. It's a Hemi. Here's the funny thing, God, you're going to hate me for saying this. When I hear Hemi, and this is coming from anybody in the aviation world, because that's what I was so, like, I got super into. Aviation was like one of my first loves. Aviation engines, I should say. But anybody that has ever been an enthusiast of aviation engines, piston engines, when we hear Hemi, we're like, oh, cool. So we're talking about Hall Scott engines. We're talking about stuff from like 19 teens. We're talking about, you know, we're talking about engines that had to have hemispheric heads because of the fact that a Hemi head is extremely efficient from a volumetric efficiency standpoint. From a pumping loss standpoint, the Hemi has very low pumping losses because your valves are candid, jammed up into the cylinder head and can open practically infinitely until they start to get in the way of a piston, basically. And that's great because that's a very low pumping loss and you're trying to drag a bunch of air into a big cylinder and compress it, but your compression ratio isn't all that great. So you're trying to get as much volumetric efficiency out of this thing, and you can't really compress it that much before you set it off because the fuel is like, you know, 60 octane, 50 octane, 70 octane. The stuff was twitchy as hell, just ignite on its own easily. So that's why they did that. The fuel wasn't there. The octane rating wasn't there. They had to have a lot of air and a lot of fuel, but not a lot of compression to get the thing to kick off. And that's how those engines work. Wedge engines or Pentastar head, which would be your 4-valve heads, work on in a different. Anyway, I won't bore you to tears with that. But I mean, we would hear Hemi and go, "Oh, cool! Like it's an old Av engine," you know. Anyway, so yeah, that's one of the reasons why they have it's a tumble port head, so there's not a lot of port velocity. They work great when you get them into their power range, and that's all good too. But then you run into other issues. There's a lot of weird things you run into with Hemis that you just don't have to take into account with a wedge engine. And that's the weirder thing for me. I'm actually more surprised that the Hemi ever really made it back in any way, shape, or form when you consider just how good, for example, a set of LS3 heads flow. It'd be a lot easier, simpler to make a wedge engine, which is why they made them. Anyway, I always was surprised that it wasn't like an overhead cam Hemi 2-valve. But anyway, I just things that you think about when you're thinking about engine stuff. Let's see. Sovereign's hanging out with Shift. Again, Chuck, thank you, buddy. Moto was saying, heard circa 1978 that a published Hemi against 440 mag shootout placed the 440 in first, and that the Hemi had to be perfectly jetted and tuned in order to outrun it. Anecdotal, more specifics needed. So that's it's always kind of a weird thing when they would put the 440 up against the 426. The 440, was it a dual quad? Was the 440 a single quad, single 4-barrel setup? You never really got a lot of the questions answered when it came to that. The funny thing is that, again, I mean, you look at the cars that sold back then. The Hemi was an $800 option, and people make it out to be like, oh my God, it was this super expensive. It would be like spending an extra $8,000 on a Scat Pack. Okay. So not quite Hellcat money, but more than like your normal Scat Pack, right? Well, that would be by today's standards. Tons of people would have done it. Listen, if the Hemi was that much better, a lot more people would have just bought the thing. It's not like it was a limited production thing. They would have sold every one that they made and made every one that they sold if the pricing was right. If the performance was right, much less the price, and the pricing could be what it was. But if it was better, like significantly better, people would have bought it. But the problem is that the Hemi, with it having such lousy port velocity, made it to where it didn't want to start when it was cold. It was just a temperamental damn thing all the way around. And you'd have to throw a bunch of gear at it just to get the thing to act like it had any power at all. So it was great when it played to its strengths, but unless a Hemi combination, like from back then, unless that Hemi had, 12-to-1 compression, a solid roller camshaft, I mean, I'm talking at least 12-to-1 compression, it's just not going to be punchy enough. You're going to have this real lazy engine up to about, 3,000, 3,500 RPM. Then it starts to wake up. 4,000 RPM, it's at its coffee, and it's really starting to come on boil. And by 5,000 RPM, now you've got something we're talking about. Whereas the 440 is on the second you fire the thing up, and at tip in, you've got a ton of torque, much less at wide open throttle. So anyway, there's a lot to be said for that type of a performance. And again, you can easily compare the two. I know this is kind of a weird way to think about it, but the 440 is a lot like having a 392 in a Scat Pack. The 426 is a lot like having a 10-speed auto Mustang, where you've got all this top-end power with really not a lot of grunt. If you give the thing enough time, it'll eventually gun down a 440. But God, by the time you've gunned down the 440, all the fun's been had. And it's just whatever kind of driving experience you want. That's literally the best way to describe the two, because that's, in my experience with the cars anyway, how the power output worked out. And by the way, just, so a very healthy 426 Hemi. This was like one of the re-release engines. Not a crazy camshaft, something around stock-ish. But I remember dynoing that car, and it made 360 to the rear wheels. So take that for whatever it's worth. And it was a Sport Fury, and I drove it, and it drove fine. It made a great noise, but it just didn't lay down a lot of power. Some other of the Hemis that I put on that dyno, which was a 248, by the way, inertia style dyno, but a stingy one nonetheless. I will admit to that. What was it 360, 365, something like that? I don't think it was. No, it wasn't 380. No, it was like 360 or 365. My big block in the AC put down 400 and 400. But the walking around number for that thing was like, for that 426 was like 340, 350. So, and that's 4-speed cars too. Oh, Motor saying publication wrote the history on the testing there. Oh, Cody saying going to do a test and swap out my Canyon filter for a paper filter on my Escape. Did the same thing on my Corolla. Nice. Go with the K&N. Sommer's asking, is it expensive, complicated to change the coolant? I'm not sure where I'd begin on that ES350 if I did it myself. I guess I'd need to do the research. There's a petcock on the radiator that you turn the petcock, it's just a valve, and it will start to empty the cooling system. Just make sure that the petcock's not welded itself shut and you end up breaking the petcock. Most of the time it'll open up though. But no, nothing really to it. That there's some companies that make a flush that will help to, flush everything out. But I mean, I don't really even know that that's necessary. Just drain it and refill it. Look at the burping procedure. It'll be specific to your car, but just check out the burping procedure. And that way you get all the air out of the system. Oh, Chuck saying I was thinking 354 gear. Oh, yeah. It'd be a nasty menace. Yeah, it would. Oh, Motor's saying 440 torque. Way fatter at the bottom end. Like you can't compare the two down low. Chuck saying my 440 is a crate engine clean. I just need to get the motor mount conversion kit. Gotcha. Fun car, man. That'll be a lot of fun. Riff saying I changed the coolant in my SRT8 just by draining it using the petcock valve and a coolant air bleeder. Yep, hooked it up to my compressor. Actually, mine. I just opened up the petcock and let it drain into the thing, and when it came time to fill it back up, I filled the reservoir up. The Hemis will self burp, but I filled the reservoir up to like 2 or 3 inches above the full line, and just let it run and drove it, and would come back and it would burp a little bit and burp a little bit and burp a little bit, and I just, when it got below the line, I just add a little bit until it came up. And I don't know, I'm a little bit different when it comes to my own stuff. Oh, Gary's checking out. Got to go to work. Later, Gary. Have a good one, buddy. Sommer's asking, why are manifolds being made of resin now as opposed to metal? Is it cost? It's actually heat. The polymer doesn't conduct heat the way that the metal does, and it's also to help save weight. The polymer manifold weighs practically nothing. That manifold, if it were made even in aluminum, would probably be another 30 pounds heavier than what it is. Oh, Madera's saying he thinks a 3-liter is too small for the trucks. Man, I don't know. The 2.7 in the Ford, it makes pretty decent power. I mean, I'm not saying it's a powerhouse, but it'd be kind of interesting if they would put a larger engine in there. But I mean, boost makes up for displacement, so that's probably what they're thinking. Gary's in saying, "What up, B? Got the arm flexing. I like it." Saying it'd be torquier too. Yep. Rich saying it feels like the 392 takes the strengths of both the 440 and the 426, puts them in one package. Yeah, you get the low end and you get some of the high end as well. And I actually did a video early on, and my thing was I will still kind of run with this. The 392 is more significant as a performance engine than the original Hemi, and a lot of people will argue with me on that, but the reality is that the 392 does give the best of both worlds, and it's super mass produced. So it's a better engine all the way around than the original Hemi. The 440 can't even compare to the 392 in terms of, stock for stock horsepower production. But the main thing to remember is that you're looking at a situation where it's just a much more modern engine, does a lot of really good things, and it's got its drawbacks, don't get me wrong. And I do have my criticisms of some of the architecture within the Hemi, but all in all, it's just a cool ass engine, and I love them. So, Chuck saying, okay, be looking at my parts inventory. There are two 750 L blocks. I think it's a dual quad intake. Dual quad on a 440 would not be the way that I would go at all. I would go RPM air gap and let it ride. Dual quads look neat, but they create many more problems than they're worth in terms of tuning. Really isn't an issue. It's fuel distribution, it's runner shapes and all of that. I mean, the only way I would have two 750s or two carburetors on a 440 is on like a tunnel ram setup or something like that. I would never, ever even think about having two 4s on a 440. I would have one 750 on a RPM air gap and call it good for that engine. That's what will play to its strengths. So I'm saying, Sweetie, I look forward to change the coolant. Yeah, it's not a big deal. It just makes a mess. Mike's saying, what differential do you recommend for a stock 5.7 Challenger to have a little more fun with, but still be usable as a daily? Would you say an MDS delete is worth it if I'm not considering a cam? I wouldn't worry about an MDS delete if you're not worried about a cam. And as far as a diff, if you've got a later model with the ZF rear ends, the 370 is a good place to look. The only problem is it can be a little bit pricey. That's the gear that was the stock gear for the Hellcat. 309 limited slip is good too if you've got a 262 gear factory in your car. But those are the two places that I would look. Cody's saying, got to get it prepped for the tune, and I remember you saying that there was little to no difference in power gains using cotton filter versus paper. There really isn't, and I use the Hellcat filter for best results. It's the Mala, and I don't have one sitting over here. Anyway, the Mala Hellcat filter, 2 thumbs up on that. You go with the K&N too, but for your application, Mala will be really good. Cody's saying Dodge found the sweet spot when they made the 392 in more ways than one. Chuck saying RPM air gap, got it. Yep, maybe keep the other 750 for a spare. You can. What I would say doing with the 750 would be to maybe, so you're going to want to tune it with a wideband. If it's a split, it's going to be a square bore, I'm sure, that you're going to be working with. Maybe have one with a set of, 74 jets in it, and have one with a set of 70 jets in it, just to see if there's going to be a significant difference in air fuel with that. But yeah, if you've got two different 750s, rebuild them if you can, or hell, if nothing else, you can sell it. So Riff's saying, I was really let down by putting a 309 diff in my Cat. Where does the 309 help when it comes to the drag strip compared to the 262? My Cat felt a lot more sluggish after putting the 309 in. So a lot of guys will say that the car feels a bit sluggish with the 309. It's because there's just not as much load on the 309. But where we found benefits to the 309 was in the 60 foot and the fact that it would trap a higher mile an hour out the back door. So, from what our experience had shown us is that gear worked really well in that combination. Some double pulley cars will stick to a 262. I know that depending on how the car is set up, maybe red eyes might technically benefit a little bit from a 262, but the 309, I love my 309, but I also made changes to my driver command torque tables to get some of that throttle response back. Just basically woke it up a little bit with what would be the tuning equivalent to making changes on a pedal box or a pedal commander. Let's see. Oh, Madera's saying you go with a 6-pack manifold on a 440. Yeah, you can. The problem is tuning a 6-pack is a little bit of a pain in the ass. Shift is asking, is there a proper way to change the coolant on a Challenger Scat Pack? How we burp the system after refill? Not really. I just let it self-burp. Fill the reservoir up, like I say, to about, say, 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches above that line, and it'll burp it down, and just keep an eye on it. Just go for a drive, stop off here and there, check it, refill is needed when it cools off. Cody's saying you got to figure out that trans tuning. Very true. Chuck saying, thanks for your info, B. Still getting myself organized here. I understand completely. I am always in that same boat. And guys, with that, I think we're over 2 hours now. I've got to wrap it up because I got to wake up very early in the morning. But I want to thank each and every one of you guys. Appreciate all the love and support, guys. It really means a ton to me, more than you know. And with that, I do got to wrap it up. If you're going to send it, don't bend it, guys. Keep your shiny side up. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Ray, miss, and love you, brother. And with that, that is a wrap. We'll catch up with you guys. Wish me luck. We're going to be going for a number on Friday. Hopefully that will work out. Getting just close enough to being outside of boost weather that it's getting spooky. So this will be the last shot that we have for a while. Potentially, if the weather holds out, we might get a few more shots at it. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Y'all have a great one. Adios.